Hey guys, welcome to the DM's Craft. As you know, I'm DM Scotty. Good to have you with me. This episode is not a crafting episode. I was going to do another episode on an encounter that I ran because I got some good response from the other one. This one was a lizard folk encounter, and the players, a little bit of background, the players had went to this dark keep, and there were these wisps that inhabited this island called Candlemere. This is all from the Kingmaker campaign, heavily modified of course, but they were on this island called Candlemere, which was near where the lizard folk lived, and they thought the wisps who were sucking off the negative energy of this island were actually their ancestors, their spirits. So when the players destroyed the evil that was on this island, it made the wisps go away. So the lizard folk were understandably upset because they thought that the players scared away their ancestors. And so, as I've talked about before with my campaign, I have this campaign called, I have this thing called the Monster Kingdom, where they were trying to get all the monsters in the area to join and fight the players' kingdom. Well, they had convinced the lizard folk that the players had scared away their ancestors. And one way they were doing this was a wisp who was working for the Monster Kingdom pretended to be an ancestor of the lizard folk and was giving them false prophecies and things to make them antagonistic to the player's kingdom. So all of a sudden these strange totems start showing up on the bank of this river near the player's kingdom, and turns out that they're warning signs for the player's kingdom. And one of the lords of the NPC lords of the kingdom scouts out the area and ends up getting captured by some lizard folk and dragged back to the lizard folk village, which was on the edge of the player's kingdom at this time. So they decide that they want to try, they're going to try to get him back. So they go through some stuff, and they could either get to this encounter by infiltration or some other ways. But the way they ended up doing it was there was a lizard folk who wanted to pose the current queen, and she would agree to be allies with the player's kingdom, and she helped them sneak into the lizard folk village and attack the queen and her monster retinue, which was from the Monster Kingdom. So this is where the players start out on the video. They start out at the entrance to this giant mound. It's this huge mound in the middle of the lizard folk village, and it's a spawning pool. So the queen lizard of the lizard folk kind of controls the breeding of the tribe. And one interesting thing I had for my lizard folk was the women were the stronger of the two. So I used the smaller lizard folk as the males and the largers as the larger ones as the women. So it was kind of like a reverse, society in the normal terms, that the women were much more physically stronger than the men. So the women were always the queens or the chiefs of the village. So the players had to get into this spawning mound and either defeat the former queen or try to reason with them and explain what was going on, what was happening to her. So that's where the encounter starts, and we'll go to the table and show you what happened. The scenario starts with the characters sneaking up to the entrance to the mound. And they kind of peer in, and this is what they see. They see a gate. It's made of wood, since the lizard folk do not use metal. And there are a couple guards, lizard folk guards, kind of just lazily standing there, not really paying much attention. The tile, little note on the tile, I did the tile with the brown spray texture paint. And I added a little bit of green to give it kind of a swampy feel, and you can see I added the roots to it also. So it looks like the gate is closed, but it's not latched with any kind of metal. So the players decide that they're going to try to sneak past, or at least distract, the lizard folk guards. So the scenario entails them, as I described earlier, with some wisps. So they have an idea. They have this magic item that can, the mage has the mage hand, and he has this globe that will glow. So to kind of simulate like a wisp or a spirit. And so he launches it into the room, and it hovers above the lizard folk, and they become mesmerized by it, and they're distracted. So they become distracted. And that's when the rogue or the monk sneaks up and is able to, this goes all the way to the ceiling, so yeah, you can't really get over it. But the monk manages to get through the gate and is on the other side. So while she's fighting the couple of lizard folk, the others run in, and the warrior runs up, smashes the latch to the gate. It's just a wooden latch. And then they all get in and take care of the lizard folk guards. So that was kind of the start of the encounter. Now, it moves into a much larger area. So once they have them taken out, they actually don't kill these lizards. They just knock them out, basically. Their last blow, they just knock them out. So they come into the large area. Now I'll set that up. This is the entrance to the larger area. So I'll set that up and show you what it looks like. So as you can see, this is a very large tile. A few notes on the tile. I did it like the standard cave tile, but I made islands on the tile. They're just pieces of cut out cardboard. I did the water type texture, but I made it like a swampy like water, so I painted it like a greenish brown to make it look swampy. I did the same technique as I did outside. I did some green and did the roots and everything to make it look more like a swamp type area. So let me explain what's going on here. So the players break in. The gig is already up because they made noise fighting. So the lizard folk are ready. I've got different islands with some lizard folk on them. There's some kind of green mass, like rotting vegetation in the center there. Then I've got two ogres, which are visiting from the monster kingdom. And there is the queen of the lizard folk, and there's another statue back in the back that has a strange light coming off of it. So basically, the players move in. They can move on these bridges that I made. They come off. So if the bridge were to get knocked off, you could actually take it off. When I stored this tile, I just left the bridges on it and then covered it up. And then when it was revealed to the players, I just set it on the table and set everything on it real quick. I left the bridges already preset on it, so I wouldn't have to take all the time putting all the bridges. You could glue these bridges, but I just set them on. So I also did some, I wanted to make it interesting, so I used some Sharpie to draw on the bridge to give it some texture. So that's another option you can always do. I also stuck little pieces of plant on some of these islands to give it a swamp feel. So as the players move in, they start to come across, they come in, and they're fighting. Moving up. As one of the characters gets close to the center here, this creature bursts out. It's this plant creature, so I just put it on there, so that comes out. So that's a nice way you can kind of hide enemies, kind of like the monster nest. I just had it said it was inside that, and then when the character got close, I just put it on there. And this was really slow, so it was fairly easy for the character to get away from it, but it was just a menace that they had to deal with. Now this water is great for the lizard folk because if they get too injured or whatever, they can jump in the water and swim away and come to another island where the players had to, cross these bridges if they didn't want to get in the water, which most of them didn't. I wouldn't want to jump in the murky water. Also, as they begin to defeat their adversaries and move up closer, the ogres there's 2 visiting ogre dignitaries. Well, that's a loose term there. Visiting, just trying to keep the lizard folk in line with the monster kingdom. And they begin grabbing hunks of this marshy island with rocks and mud and everything, and pick it up and start lobbing it at the players. So they've got that menace also. Now, as they get closer, they were after one of their friends who was captured, and he's on this altar. So they see him on the altar. So then you can place him on the altar. And as they get closer, he tells them what's going on, that the lizard folk are being tricked by the monster kingdom. They're using a wisp to pretend like it's one of the lizard folk's ancestors and giving them, telling them prophecies and things that would help to align them with the monster kingdom. So it's a totally false thing that's going on as far as the lizard folk are concerned. So their friend tells them this. And the ogre, pissed off about this, walks up and smashes their friend in the chest, and so he starts, gushing blood out of his mouth and ears, and he's obviously dying. And so the players have to try to get up there and save him. So they start resorting to some diplomacy checks to try to convince the lizard folk that they're not here to hurt them; they're just trying to help them uncover this plot to control them. And so they do manage to convince the lizard folk that the monster kingdom is using them and has tricked them. So the lizard folk begin to turn on the ogres, and they basically tear the ogres to shreds in front of the players, and then the players are able to make friends with the lizard folk and add them to their allies. So it was a really fun battle. This is another example of you don't have to beat the snot out of everything. The players use the advantage of knowing that the lizard folk have been tricked, and did diplomacy checks and while they're fighting, and try to convince them that the monster kingdom was evil. So they didn't just beat them into submission; they actually helped them. So it's nice to make scenarios like this that are interesting and not just a fight. Adding other options. I mean, they could have just beat them up if they wanted, but the ruler, who was one of the player characters, realized that, hey, this would be great to have them on our side. So they, decided to, do the diplomacy with them. So, but also this is, you can see the theme of this tile is great. It really looks like it's, a swampy type terrain and that kind of thing. So this was supposed to be a spawning pool. So the lizard queen would mate with the males and spawn in this pool. So, and then this whole thing was like a big mud dome that was sealed. So yeah, there you go. And looks great. It was a really fun battle. And I'll see you next time on the Imps Craft. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some close-up views of this so you can kind of see some of the details. It's kind of hard to see from that distance there. So I'll do a few more shots with some close-up details. So there's the final island at the end of the spawning ground or pool. And you can see I have, the queen and her guards, and I have a few ogres that were visiting, and then I have a few pieces of Mage Knight pieces. This is a altar, and this is like a statue that I had the wisp inhabiting as the ancestral type NPC for the lizard folk. So all the rest is everything I've crafted. Those were just a few pieces that I added to give some detail. So now I'll show you another view. So here's a close-up view of the middle island. And I just had the rotting vegetation. This is just rolled up toilet paper, rolled up paper towels, painted green on a cardboard base. I just soaked them in Elmer's glue, Elmer's glue all, and painted them green. So the monster could pop out of that rotting vegetation. The bridges are just strips of cardboard cut in the shape of the bridges and painted to look like wood bridges. So that's pretty much it for the tile itself. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time for the DM's Craft.